Welcome everyone to the weekly broadcast. It's Mazel Tov for Moshe, yeah? You get a Mazel Tov. Okay, sister got engaged, yeah? Mazel Tov. Hey everyone. Sein der Chassen Leben schon mit Jitten, jeder ist einfach The message of this week is quite apparent. We speak about Tzetzei going to war on your enemy. Chassidus says that what? When you go out to war, you should realize that you're above your enemy. And this week, I don't like to discuss current events, but if you can turn it on, it doesn't hurt. You see vividly, the Taliban wins. Why does the Taliban win? It doesn't have the money, maybe it does. It doesn't have the equipment, it doesn't, but it has morale. It believes in something. It could have the whole United States of America for 20 years, couldn't do anything. Because they didn't believe in their cause. You have the Afghanistans themselves. They're given money, billions of dollars. They're given equipment. They don't stand up to fight. Not shot that they lose the war. They don't even fight. Taliban just comes with a van and a gun mounted on top, and they run away. Why is that? Because that's what Rabbi writes in Tanya in Berich of Zion. They could have two people fighting a war, even if one person is stronger and has more money and has more PR, but if he doesn't have morale, he doesn't believe in his cause, he doesn't have inner strength, he's worthless, he's gone. So the Nakud is that a Jew, when he looks at the world, he sees the world as a big United States of America, a very big United States of America, full with all types of things that are not necessarily enhancing our Avodas Hashem. Whether it's Divrei Harishus, the Klippus, the Sitra Achra, permissible matters, forbidden matters. A Jew says, how could I overcome all of this? So the bottom line is, we have to realize that at the end of the day we were here for 2,000 years. You had all great kingdoms and empires, and more importantly, different isms and different ideas and belief systems and philosophies that came and went, and they disappeared. Why? Because they had no backbone. They looked very impressive, but at their core, they're rotten. They might be very persuasive, they might be very enticing, but at the end of the day they have nothing. So eventually they dissipate. Mashenk and the Jewish people, according to nature, makes no sense that we're victorious. But we are. Why? Because we're above our enemies. We have the truth. So the first thing is, a person has to realize he shouldn't get expelled from the whole United States of America, from the whole Afghanistan, the whole world. Because this is all, they might have money, they might have PR, they might make a lot of noise. This is garnish with garnish, it's nothing with nothing. When push comes to shove, there's nothing left. I had a story that I like to repeat when Lenin say Yimach Shemoy on him, or the other Nish, yes, there's no difference, but Lenin was, he was one of the Bolshevik Revolution, the leader of the Bolshevik Revolution. So he was already started rebel rousing years before, already 1905, whatever it is. They started making demonstrations and things like that. And the Tsar called him in, and he was I think in prison for a while. Makes a difference what his history is, but anyway, they interrogated him. They said, "We don't understand. Don't you realize you're trying to fight a wall?" The Tsar's regime at that point was like firmly established, firmly entrenched. It wasn't possible. Didn't seem possible in anyone's minds that such a regime would crumble. So he says, yes, you're a wall, but you're a rotten wall. You give one bang on the wall, and it comes crashing down. The same thing as the whole Elam Hazeh Gashmi. The whole world is everything that it tries to show for itself. It's not emes, it's not the truth. So if you give it one smash, if it does his avoid, it all crumbles into pieces. That's the first Torah. The Torah is Tzetzei l'milchama le'yivecha. The Rebbe says a very interesting interpretation, very interesting perspective. The Eibishter created entities in this world which are enemies of the Jewish people, or enemies of the Eibishter even though technically, logically makes no sense how the Eibishter could create something which the Eibishter needs to create every second, and nevertheless that thing is fighting the Eibishter himself. How could something fight the thing that's creating it? But the Eibishter is a kol yachol. The Eibishter is not bound by logic. He's not limited by rationale. The Eibishter, he creates entities which fight their very source of their own creation. They fight the Eibishter, they fight Torah Mitzvahs, they fight the Yidden. And they seem very strong. And the Yid could get Nisbol. Not only that, it says the Shavisa Shivya. It's talking about that the enemies that the Jewish people are fighting against took Jewish people captive in previous wars, which means that the Eibusha gave them the ability to overcome, to fight Kedusha. But that's all before you start doing anything. When you're sitting there in your corner and you're looking at the world and you're brooding and you're getting angry, you see this, you see that. This is wrong, that's wrong, right? They say a story after 120 years, the guy goes up to heaven and he starts complaining. So he sent me down to this world. Look at what a terrible world this is over here in the west side of Manhattan. This is taking place, and over here that's taking place. So he says, yes, we're very well aware. That's why we sent you down, to do something about it. What did you do about it? So the nekuda is that a person could sit there and brood about what's going on and the bottom line is, if you don't do anything about it, the world will seem a jungle. But if you kisei, once you go out, the Rebbe says, once you act, you go out of your comfort zone, you realize you have a mission to fight. So Allah Yivach, you'll realize that you're above your enemies. Your enemies have no substance. Until the Eibusha gives them the ability, the Rebbe writes on Tanya, the Eibusha gives Klippa Sitracha the ability to, they're like an inflated balloon, a hot air balloon. The Eibusha gives them the ability to blow up. To test your resolve. Once you go out to fight them, the Eibusha takes away their ability, because rationally they have no ability. Rationally, how could someone fight the Eibusha? It's just the Eibusha gave them the ability to. So the Yid should do his avodah. Once he does this, goes out, do his avodah, they lose their the Eibusha takes away their ability to inflate themselves anymore. So it's garnish with garnish. There's nothing left. You just take a van with a gun on top, and the whole oil mazar gashmi falls down. They don't even fight. That's the first nekuda. Then there are many other mitzvahs in Pashas Kiseitze. The final mitzvah in Pashas Kiseitze also speaks about a war. Also starts with war and it ends with war. So what does it finish off with? The war with Amalek. Right? We have to remember what Amalek did. What did Amalek do? Amalek, what was Amalek against? What was Amalek fighting? So there's many different aspects to Amalek. But we have at the end of Pashas Kiseitze, there's the mitzvahs that come right before. The Torah tells us the story of Amalek. It says a person should not have false weights. It speaks about having false measurements. How would a person have false measurements? They have two types of measurements. In those days, they didn't have scales. They had scales. I mean, the way they had weights, they didn't have electronic, digital scales. They would have a weight. They would have a piece of slab of silver that weighed a pound. If the weight was a pound, so you would put a pound in one side of the scale, then you would put meat, whatever it was you're selling on the other side. So a person could cheat. He could have 1 pound with which he buys. He pays $2 per pound. So he's going to have, when he goes to buy, he's going to have something which is really more than a pound, but it looks like a pound. And there's a way how to play around with the scales. He could put it in salt. There's ways how to make it the same piece of metal. It should weigh more or less. So he'll play around. He'll cheat. He'll get more with one thing, and he'll cheat the guy. He'll sell him. He tells him, I'm selling you a pound of meat. He's really selling him only 90% of a pound. It looks like a pound. So such a person, it says that Al-Avim Mishkal is Bo Amoli, that the Amoli comes because of the sin of people playing around with cheating with their scale. What is the message over here? So there's a few points. One point, the Rebbe once spoke a Sikha, forget which year it was. The Rebbe said a very powerful point. The Rebbe says a person has 2 measuring sticks. When it comes to matters, maybe I'm rephrasing the words of the Rebbe, the point is when it comes to matters of physical things, is 1 measuring stick. Money, I need to make money. Fanciest car out there, I need to have. This, I need. When it comes to physical matters, is 1 yardstick. When it comes to spiritual matters, there's a different yardstick. You can have a guy who comes daven shachris. You can't daven shachris for more than 10 minutes. You give us 22 minutes, we give you a shachris. You can't take more than that. More than 22 minutes is already. But then you could stay in shul. You might think the guy's pushed in a rush. Then after shachris, you could spend in shul a whole hour, sit down with a cup of coffee, and discuss everything that's going on. They don't understand. If you didn't have time, you had to rush through the words of your mouth. If you didn't have time, I understand. But if you did have time, so maybe at least add another 5 minutes. Call up kochas. So at least do it equal. Spend a half hour. I'm not saying you should spend a half hour talking about it in the table, and particularly in shul. but at least do it equal. No, there's two measurements. When it comes to Kedusha, I have no time. When it comes to wasting time, then you have plenty of time. When it comes to giving money, chveis, they got to fancy the land, see whatever it is, there you have. When it comes to donating to a moisid, then you start digging zich, yes, no, maybe so, does he deserve, doesn't he deserve, so on and so forth. So this is the point that you have, a person can have two different yardsticks, saying the exact same thing, but all of a sudden when it comes to one, it's the way we are. The Yetzer Hara is a natural liar, that's the way he's born. The Frierdiker Rebbe says in one of his sichos, was elderly chassid in his 90s, he said, Rebbeinu Shalom, my whole life I lied, give me one day of truth. We're natural liars, the Yetzer Hara naturally he plays, he manipulates. So yeah, so there's two yardsticks. When it comes to physical things, is one thing. We take life very serious, we get very nervous. If we owe someone money, we can't sleep at night. When we owe the Eibishter, we promise the Eibishter we'll learn Torah, whatever it is, we manage to sleep. So again, it's a different yardstick. So this is what a molek is. A molek is that desensitivity that causes us that spirituality, godliness shouldn't be real. Physical things should be real, but a molek disconnects. A molek tries to take away the sensitivity for Kedusha in a way that there's, Klippa is real, Ruchnius isn't real. If a person thinks about it, it makes no sense. It's very easy. The person makes an honest as an outsider. They once saw someone as an outsider to the human race. What do you think of us? You understand? So in other words, if a person will be objective, if you're able to do such a thing, you'll realize that we're all hypocrites. There's slavery, everyone is a hypocrite. But the Nekuda is,
we should try to be less.
You need to overcome a molek. How do you overcome a molek? First thing is beware. There says beware, beware of a molek. That's one thing, but the other Nekuda is a molek. Going back to the weights, a molek says, what does a molek do? A molek says that the Eibishter doesn't, you could fool the Eibishter, You could put the weights in salt and it's going to appear. Not only could you fool other people, but you're fooling the Eibishter as well. Molek doesn't believe in Hashgacha Pratis. Molek denies Zidei Rebbeinu. He doesn't allow godliness to be real. The only way to fight him is through making godliness real. Every Yidden in Neshama has that power, has that ability, but he has to be aware of a Molek and overcome him. Mechazek is Amun. He has to believe in Hashgacha Pratis. Everything that we do, to the last detail of learned in Tanya recently about skill chavina, right? Chapter 11. You know the story with the guy that his business wasn't going very well. So he went to his rabbi. So his rabbi told him that by Chassidim, if you don't have a question, you don't have an answer, you open up the Tanya. That was before the days of the Igris. You open up the Tanya and we see if there's a message in the Tanya. So he opens up the Tanya, he smiles, he tells the rabbi, he opened up the chapter 11. So we have in Tanya, we have Igeres HaKodesh. There's different chapter 11s. There's Kotei HaMorim, but there's Igeres HaKodesh. There's chapter 11 of skill chavina. What's called skill chavina and Igeres HaKodesh? Al Rebbe says the person is going through terrible suffering. That's because he has a rotz, he has his own will, he has his own desire for Bonei Chayim Uzaina. Says the Eibishter's whole reason of creation is to test you. Are you going to realize that the Eibishter is good and whatever is happening comes from a source of good that is uncomprehendable? Or are you going to think, no, the reason why I'm sick is because this happened, that happened, the other thing happened, I was exposed to this germ, that, whatever it is, the reason why I lost this business, because of this. Are you going to believe that everything comes from the Eibishter? And are you going to believe the Eibishter is really good? Or are you going to say, no, this is the Nekudik. It's very powerful, very, very powerful letter of the Rebbe. The Rebbe basically says he shouldn't have the test of us being put into this world is that we should realize that everything is the Eibishter and the Eibishter is ultimately good. We can't understand that. The Rebbe doesn't say you could understand it. But if you try to believe in it and be Messiah, but he says really think about it very deeply, you'll be able to realize that it's so that's the Nekudas. You have to be aware of Amalek. Amalek tries to cool off your enthusiasm, tries to make physicalities be more real than Ruchnius, and we have to fight him. But the main thing is you don't have the main thing is do something about it. Go out. Person, the whole reality of the whole world is as long as the Taliban didn't yet come out from the shadows of the van and we go. Once it comes out, everything is
so gone. We're over, basically. The Amalek is out there.
What? I just finished saying that if you look at the world and you think the world is this, so you should know no. So you're saying that the world, that's the whole.
No, you said the Taliban has come out of the ban.
Yeah, what does the Taliban have to do with me? The Rebbe spoke in when Russia was fighting Afghanistan. The Rebbe says, the Rebbe spoke in the whole Sikha. The Gemara says in Masechet Brachos that it's worse if a person in his own family was a child that's not behaving than Goygu Mogi. Russia Tarbus Razech Beis Shladam. The Rebbe says the Goygu Mogi. That's the Ramais Afghanistan. Then was when Russia invaded Afghanistan. In other words, yeah, the world is shaking. It doesn't have to do with what's going on with my life. My Vedas Hashem is more than the word that is so a powerful word. When the First World War broke out, so the Gedder Rebbe saw people talking. So he asked people, what are they talking? They're talking about the war. So he told them a word that a previous Rebbe said. The mother says, that if you see kingdoms that are fighting, not just fighting, Zirkind also means they're like
harassing,
instigating one another. They're like, it doesn't have to mean they're actually fighting, but they're,
edgy.
They're getting edgy one with the other. He says, await the feet of Mashiach. This is the opportune time of Mashiach to come. So he said, the interesting time, he says, if you see people fighting, don't get lost and start opening every newspaper and every op-ed and seeing and start reading who's at fault and if Biden was right or he was wrong. Because if you see the world is shaking, you worry about Mashiach's coming. Don't start getting caught up about the war and spending your whole life figuring out. Eibusher owns the world anyway. So anyhow, Kapanim das is in the Kudah. But the Rebbe spoke a very powerful, deep Sikha. Tavshin and Alf. The Rebbe said a very powerful word. The Rebbe said, Tzetzei la Jew really is above the whole thing. A very powerful point. The Jew could be in the world. And he says, yeah, the world is rough and tough and ugly, and the person himself looks at himself the same way. He knows he has a neshama, he knows he has the ability, if he really works hard, to overcome it. But he identifies himself with the way he is. That's who he is. Yeah, he is who he is. The Rebbe says, no, a Jew has to know that his whole thing that he's dealing with the world, it's not his real entity. His real entity is, he's above it all. It's just, he came down, the Jew is leaving, the fact that a Jew came down to this world, he left his real habitat, he left his real entity. The way where he really is, he's above it all. If a Jew will think about it from that perspective and try to, it's a shift of perspective. Doesn't mean you become a tzaddik overnight, but it gives you a different perspective, it gives you the ability to look at the situation totally different. You look at it, it's not shot that I'm stuck, there's a big difference. Somebody's fighting a war where his life, this is, he really feels this is what life is all about. Or he's fighting a war, which he has to do what he needs to do, but he doesn't feel that he's really stuck in it. So if a person realizes that he's really above it all, then he's able to be matzliach. And l'chaim, we should all finish the war. And we don't even have to fight. We should just do our avodah, have a lot of morale, have a lot of confidence. Even though we don't have a lot of money, a lot of equipment, a lot of everything, but we have the Eibusher with us, we have the Torah with us. Jewish people are eternal. We should have the coming of Mashiach. Take it from Yad Mamish, Nexir, Chassim, Tevin, Hashem, and Tevin, Yisuf.
Amen.
Wow, very good. Very good.